We rehearse this a lot. In fact, we rehearse it every year and sometimes multiple times in a year within our Christian tradition. More than that, we rehearse it within our own lives, whether we name it formally or not. Our Native American friends call it sun, sunrise, sun again. The world mythologies refer to it as journey, fall, rebirth. World religions talk about it in terms of life, sin, rebirth. In our Christian tradition, we think of it as life, death, resurrection. Walter Brueggemann, one of the world's renowned Old Testament scholars and theologians, says that this rhythm is one that seems to be a part of all people's rhythms in life, whether we recognize it or not, whether we like it or not. And he's written several books on the Psalms with reference to this orientation, disorientation, and reorientation. Even scientists refer to a sun or a star, then goes supernova and explodes, dies. But thereafter, there's this eternal flow of light and energy that flows eternally through the universe, in turn creating new life. It would seem that whether we like it or not, our trajectory in life is one of change and transformation. It's what we rehearse in the Lenten season and the Easter event. This is the course of our lives. But that doesn't mean it's comfortable, because all of this entails change. And most of us like to do with as little change as possible. The psalm we're going to read in a few minutes has to do with this ordering in our lives. During this 3 weeks of this Lenten series, our lay leader, Tim Hobson, and I are going to talk about this threefold movement. We begin today with order. Next week, we're going to talk about disorder. And then the following week, we will talk about reordering. And we have discussions and classes upstairs, room 200, during the 10 o'clock hour. But, Lord willing, and the technology working, we'll also participate in it here, together and online, to allow us to begin to move into a better, comfortable level of recognizing that what we all know is true. Change is inevitable. The question is, how do we see that change? What do we do with that change in ways that are redemptive, in ways that can be transformative and helpful? That really came clear to me after last week's sermon, where I talked about the freedom, the permission that we have from the psalmists to really be raw with God, to be angry with God, to be crying out to God, shaking our fist at God. And that was uncomfortable to preach, and yet the feedback I got from some number of you was, gosh, that was helpful. That was permission giving. Even though that's different than what I've heard before, that's helpful. It's Tim's and my hope that this series on order, disorder, reorder will also be helpful. So, to that end, listen for what the psalmist says here in Psalm 8 of the Psalter. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name throughout the earth. You made your glory higher than heaven. From the mouths of nursing babies, you've laid a strong foundation because of your foes in order to stop vengeful enemies. When I look up at your skies and what your fingers made, the moon and the stars that you set firmly in place? What are human beings that you think about them? What are human beings that you pay attention to them? You've made them only slightly less than divine, crowning them with glory and grandeur. You've let them rule over your handiwork, putting everything under their feet, all sheep and all cattle, the wild animals too, the birds in the sky, the fish of the ocean, everything that travels the pathways of the sea. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name throughout the earth. This is the first creation psalm within the Psalter. The first 7 have to do with lament and concern. This is the one that's just sheer praise. And there's any number of them within the Psalter that is just sheer praise and thanksgiving for what God has done to order this world. You heard the language in there. It's grounded clearly in Genesis 1, where God takes light and separates it out of the darkness, takes the land, separates it out from the abyss, from the water, takes the land and populates it with all kinds of fish and birds and animals and all the vegetation needed to sustain all of life on earth, along with the water that is now only in certain places, before God's crown jewel, the creation of you and me, and giving us stewardship over this amazing creation, the responsibility to live into order and recreating and reordering this earth in ways that honor the Creator. A clear sense of order that gives all of the Psalms a sense of grounding, a reference point, what Jesus would later say in the New Testament, that strong foundation, that rock upon which we build our house, that the rain falls and the wind blows, it will not fall down, right? Ordering. I told you all a couple of weeks ago about being that nerdy 10, 12-year-old in Houston growing up, wanting to be an astronaut, couldn't be an astronaut, got too tall by junior high, eyes too bad. That aspiration went down the tubes. Leave it to that guy to know this little bit of trivia, that when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong landed on the moon in July of 1969, they left behind on the lunar landscape, before they blasted off in the lunar module, they left a kind of time capsule. And in that time capsule, amongst several things, in addition to the American flag, you've seen the images, decked out in a frame on a pole on the surface, we left a time capsule. And in that, amongst the various things, was a silicon disk. And on that silicon disk were messages from 73 different countries. So that anybody would come and be able to stick this in their version of a computer, they'd know who was there first. And amongst those 73 messages from 73 countries, one was from the Vatican, which, though not a country, is its own distinct entity. And the message from the Vatican to go to the moon was Psalm 8. O Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory and your grandeur above the heavens. That's what the Pope wanted any future visitors to know about the nature of this moon, of this country, of this expedition. That God is in the midst of that. God is creating and recreating. I grew up with that. I grew up and watched that on the black and white television with the 2 rabbit ear antenna that never got rid of all the fuzz and the static. Watched it with glory and grandeur, but not just all of that. It was growing up as a child in the 60s in Houston, Texas, in a white suburban new area that had just been built. And 50 years will taint or at least blur your nostalgia. Because to me, those were good times. I mean, life was good. We were putting people on the moon. I had mom and dad. I had 3 sisters. We had a house. I had a good school to go to, played with my friends in the neighborhood. It was idyllic. It was just wonderful. But that's my experience as a white male growing up in a white suburb. Somebody my age who was black or Hispanic or Filipino growing up in Houston, or somebody who's just 10 or 15 years older than me growing up in Houston would have had a very different recollection of the 60s. I know men in this church who were flying missions with their fingers ready to release atomic bombs if necessary, flying during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I knew men who battled in Vietnam. I know women who fought by their side. I know people who walked in civil rights marches for the rights of all people, not just whites. Their recollection of the 60s is real different than my recollection of the 60s, right? But all of us, regardless of age and background, we all have a place in our mind that we go back to that was a sense of order in our life, where things were fairly easy to understand, that things had a certain rhyme and a certain rhythm, that there were touchstones for a sense of security and warmth and stability. However blurry that might be X number of years later, we think of that, we go back to that as what presented order and gave us a framework in which to live our lives and develop our faith. What was that for you, is my question. And if we're lucky, we might just have enough technology to help us. Pull out your phones. Pull out your phones and go to, on your browser, menti.com, menti.com, menti.com. If you can read it, it's in the way small print at the top of the slide. I can barely read it, so I'm going to read it off to you. And this is audience participation, including you at home. So pull out your phones at home. This is real time, we hope. Menti.com, menti.com, push go, and that should pull up a little website there. And there's a code that you've got to type in order to have access. Here's the code. 2749-3133. 2749-3133. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Anything coming up on your phones? Yes? Houston, we have liftoff. Okay, 2749-3133. There should be a place for you to type in your answer. Here's the question. What gave you a sense of order growing up? Type in 3 or 5 words, things, people that gave you a sense of order growing up. Type that in now. And we'll see if the magic works. Randy Jennings is holding his breath. The whole team back there is holding their breath. Okay. Voila. Maybe not. Houston, we have a problem. Oh, look at this. This is a word cloud. And what it does is take all of your input here in the sanctuary, you at home, and it enlarges the words that keep getting repeated by folks. So you see in a mosaic and beautiful way, every time it switches, that means more input's coming in, telling us what are the things that gave you a sense of order when you were a kid growing up. And real clearly, it's school and church and family and friends and parents. And you would be amazed, or maybe not, how consistent this is with the answers that were given at the 9 o'clock service. These were the things that gave us a sense of place, that solid rock. Okay, whew. Can we refresh and do again? Yes, here's the code again. Second question. 2749-3133. 2749-3133. All right, what are 3 or 4 words that give your life a sense of order now? Let's see how that compares to when we were young. 3 or 4 things that give you a sense of order now in your life. Type that in now. When this works, it is so much fun. Everybody's doing this here. As many people who are here are at home doing this. Screen goes blank, and look at that. Let's see how similar. Church, family, work pops up a little more now, as well as friends. God got a little bigger than God was previously. Bible, spouse, sports. Yeah, gosh, that should have more. That should be way bigger. Sports should be way bigger. But church, family, work, God, husband, school, spouse, well done. Okay. People still, taxes? Taxes? We need to have a conversation. Whoever you are, I'm available for appointments. Just come on by. Savings? Sure. Gym? Yeah. But work, family, church, God, friends, parents, yeah, it hasn't changed too much from when we were young. That's helpful. All right, next question, and I'll read the code again. Next question, 27493133. Type in 3 or 4 words that give you the words that name what it is you feel when you think about school and home and church and God and family and friends. What's the feeling, 3 or 4 feeling words of what that does for you? Type those in right now. And you at home. It's fun when it works. It's really frustrating when it doesn't. And I got a crack team back there that is tapping and pointing, and look at this. Here are the words. How do we feel? Love, security, peace, joy, happiness, safety, comfort, warmth, calm, satisfaction. Calm, security, peace keep popping up. Yes. If you have to describe what standing on a solid rock feels like, those are great words. And it's words that we long for, especially when we look at events half a world away. We no longer take security, peace, calm, love, happiness for granted like we might have just a month ago. These are the things that are important to us. These are the things of our heart speaking. And these words and the importance of these words as a function of our order really became clear to me again, not just with Ukraine, but it got way more personal than that for me as a pastor and me as a friend when Rick Klein died Thursday. If you didn't know that, I'm sorry. That's going to come up in our pastoral prayer. Rick was just here 2 weekends ago, and he was running around, and we were hugging, and I say, man, you feeling great? He goes, I'm feeling great. But he had some heart ailments and some walking pneumonia ailments that conspired against him. And my heart is just heavy with the loss of Rick Klein, just heavy today. He reminds me, and his death reminds me, that order doesn't just happen. Rick is one of those persons who I was blessed to come to know quickly after I came to this church. And he, along with a number of saints, who are in the presence of God now, are so instrumental in creating a sense of order for all of us without us even knowing it. Rick Klein, Jeff Jeffers, Ann Gray, Jerry Stoll, Russ and Sandra Akins. The list is long. I only name a few of persons who create a sense of order every time I come into the church. By their presence, by their regard for other people, by their service and their glad smile to anyone and everyone in need. It just becomes part of the water that I swim in at this church, and to lose one of them is just a loss to the order that I feel in our life as a church, as my life as an individual. But here's the thing. None of them came that way to this church. None of them arrived day one and were instantly the contributing members of order of this church. That happened with people before them. Each of the names I mentioned and so many more that I could, by the virtue of their calling, by the virtue of their gifts, lived into a life of servitude, lived into a life of creating and recreating order for those around them, us, and gave us a sense of homecoming every time we come into this place, every time you came into their presence. There was that sense of, and you all described the feelings well, comfort, security, calm, peace, joy. These are the things from those that help create order within this beautiful family called the church. And it occurs to me then that which others by God have given to us, we by God are then given charge to give to others, just as they have always given to us. One more word cloud. What are the things, if we got that next question up there? I might be asking too much. Yes, things that you'd like from your church. This is kind of like thinking forward, going forward. What are the things that you would like from your church to continue to give you and others a sense of order? Again, that code is 2749333. What are the things you want from your church that give you a sense of order? Some folks already jumped on that early. Good. We're getting the hang of this. We would like a church family that provides sense of community, a sense of love, a sense of consistency, friendship. Again, the bigger the word, the more repetitious times people have been typing it in. So the bigger words are the ones that are really important to us as a community. So it's consistency, it's love, it's community. It's that rock of dependability that we really want for our lives when life seems to be like that roller coaster we talked about last week, upside down. We need to have this. The good news is we get to do that. All of us get to do this. As was given to us by God through these, like Rick Klein, so we by God can give this to others. But we do it by intention. We do it by repetition. We do it by love of God and the love of neighbor. We do it because we want others to experience this when they come through our doors, every time they come through our doors, just like others made us feel when we came through these doors. O Lord, how majestic is your name in all of their lives, and in the lives that you are, and in the lives that you will touch. Thanks be to God. Amen.